All right, it is time for another Longhorn Confidential. Danny Davis, the Austin American-Statesman, here with Kirk Bohls, Cedric Golden, Thomas Jones. We appreciate y'all tuning in, whether it's watching us on YouTube, checking out statesman.com, or listening to us on wherever you get your podcast. But we have a lot to talk about, and it's pretty much all football. The spring game was this past Saturday. We are recording this on Monday. So spring drills, they're done. Let's talk about the spring game. Kirk, we've seen a few of these spring games in our days. You never really know what exactly to take from them. I mean, whether or not you can gauge whether this team's a national championship contender. This thing means absolutely nothing. That's, I guess, kind of for the eye of the beholder. But, from your eye, what did you see in the press box on Saturday?
They looked as good as they could look. I mean, overall. I mean, again, it's spring game. Flip a coin and see. But you see talent. You see talent all over the field. And Sarkisian addressed that with us in the post game, is that he loves a bit of depth. Before the starter went down, you worried about, oh man, what's the drop off going to be like when you put the backup in? And he said they don't have that worry anymore. So they look like a team that's got depth. They look like a team that's got talent. They look like a team that's got weapons. And quite frankly, I see a Big 12 contender. There's no reason why in year 3 they shouldn't be a contender for the Big 12, if not the outright favorite.
Obviously, the position everyone cares about, and that's everyone's going to talk about, is the quarterback position. I mean, there's a reason why Arch Manning got a standing ovation from the 30,000-ish people who were at DKR this weekend. So after the game, Steve essentially said QB1 is going to be Quinn, which I don't think is a complete shock, being since he was the starting quarterback last year. But people were kind of wondering whether Arch was going to come in here and take that job, or people were willing to see what Malik Murphy had after not getting to see him last year. But Quinn Ewers in the spring game, 16 for 23, 195, had a nice TD pass at A.D. Mitchell, was probably the star of that highlight with the one-handed grab in the end zone. Then Malik Murphy, I mean, we're going to try not to drive the Malik Murphy hype train, but that young man, he had a game too, 9 of 13 for 165, a long touchdown pass to Jonte Cook in the second half. So we're going to start with you said Quinn being QB1, not a surprise, but is it the right call? Should Steve extend this QB competition into the fall, or did Quinn do enough during the spring that you feel comfortable saying that's the guy, and we'll see what Malik and Arch can do developmental wise over the next couple months?
It's Quinn's job. Let Quinn work. Quinn got in better shape. Quinn looked good. Malik Murphy, though, wow. And I know it's simulated. I know they can't hit the quarterback and they don't blitz and none of that. But sheer arm talent and Duck, we talked to Robert Griffin III, who knows a little bit about quarterbacking, before that game. And he told us, he goes, look for Malik Murphy. He's got arm talent. And so, we filed that away, and then we saw it and we're like, wow. That guy can spin a football, and he looks like he's used to doing it. It wasn't one of those things where he hit the lottery, where this is just the day that he's going to be great. No, you can tell he's done that before, and that helps the room, and it takes the pressure off of Arch to live up to the name on the back of his jersey. Let Arch develop. Let Malik Murphy settle into that backup role. And if Quinn struggles, hey, there's a potential playmaker waiting to play. So we all know this, and I'll hand it to you, Thomas. We all know that it takes a lot for Sark to pull Quinn Ewers. But after watching what we saw, if this is the tip of the iceberg, I think this kid, he looked like a college quarterback to me.
Yeah, I mean he's in the second season. He's a 2-year starter now, and I think people sometimes, we get enamored with the recruiting cycle and the arm talent. Everybody sees Arch. Oh, this is a 5-star kid. He's a Manning. He's the best quarterback recruit UT's had since Vincent Young back in the day. Look, it's in college now. He's a true freshman. He should still be a senior in high school. It's an adjustment to this level of football. And you're seeing Quinn is making that adjustment. He's now in a second year in Sark's system. He's had a full spring. he was in command of the offense. And it helps when Sark puts, the starting offensive line with Quinn, the starting receivers with Quinn, that helps too. But yeah, Quinn's a truth. I think he's the unquestioned starter. And Malik Murphy, we all love the backup quarterback, and he's a golden boy right now.
He's got the arm. You talk about firepower, golly, can he drill it? And the other thing too, Danny, Sark loves that deep vertical stretch the field part of the passing game, and he likes it to a fault and tries to push that too hard. But boy, and Quinn and Malik both have great arms. So, but yeah, he threw it on a dime to Jonte Cook for the touchdown, and he threw the other one, DeAndre Moore, that dropped. So, were you as impressed with Malik as we were, Danny?
Yes, sorry. Yes, I think we've all been kind of waiting to see exactly what Malik Murphy is as a quarterback. We didn't get to see that last year, and even in practice windows, I think of the 3 or 4 practices media was able to attend, Malik was only able to throw during one of them. So I think everyone was kind of ready to see who this guy was. I mean, at one point during his high school career, he was a 5-star recruit, ended up signing as a 4-star. So obviously he has talent, and Steve Sarkisian doesn't recruit scrubs at the quarterback position. So obviously if Sark, saw something out of him in high school, you obviously know this young man has talent, and we got to see it. And who knows how much we're going to actually see that during the season, because he is going to be QB2. There is a QB1, and you only get to see that QB2 if disasters happen. So who knows how much we actually see during the fall. But I think Texas fans have to feel a little bit confident. And I think if you're a coach at Texas, now that, hey, we can work Arch in, we can develop him, we can, he doesn't have to be the guy that the first time there's a sign of struggles, we're going to be tempted to throw him out there, because we know we have a more than capable backup in Malik, who, they probably already knew that, but the fans now know that too. But I do want to say about Quinn, was pretty impressed by just kind of his attitude. We've heard a lot from his coaches and his teammates, kind of how he's become more of a leader this offseason. He looks better, both physique wise and getting rid of the mullet, and kind of cleaning up there. Not that means the world, but he came into the post-game press conference. It was the first time we got to talk to him since the Alamo Bowl, and he said what a lot of people have been saying, that last year wasn't good enough, that he knew that, and that he needed to do some changes. And I'm it'd be really easy if you're Quinn Ewers to kind of rest on your laurels and be, I'm Quinn Ewers and this is my job, and tune out the haters. But it kind of seems like he knows that last year was not good enough, and that he knows that there's a couple hungry guys right behind him. And that's another good thing about Malik making the strides he's making, is that I'm sure Quinn knows that this kid can take my job if I mess it up. So I was impressed by Quinn's attitude. I was impressed by his performance this spring, what people were saying about him, and then obviously really impressed by what Malik showed us on Saturday. But either side or Thomas, we heard about Kirk's observations from Saturday, but what do you all see on Saturday that kind of stood out?
Well, I'll start. Well, one thing, okay, the offenses look great. There was almost 600 yards of offense, and they didn't play the equivalent of a full game. But on the flip side, that defense gave up almost 600 yards. They didn't force a turnover. They had guys running free and wide open in the secondary. Now, there were some guys, Jalen Catalon didn't play. He's a projected starter at safety. Jalen Gilbo didn't play. So the secondary was missing some guys, but still, some guys got smoked out there trying to cover these receivers. So that's a concern. Simple as that. That's still a concern. Now, granted, you couldn't get a real pass rush in a spring game, and one of the receivers, AD Mitchell's wearing a green jersey, so you couldn't really rough him up. But still, I'd be a little concerned with the lack of takeaways and the lack of really much coverage in the secondary.
Yeah, that's a good point, and we have to take it with a grain of salt, because you can't blitz.
Yeah,
and you can't. They didn't do a lot of stunning. I did notice
they did some. They just can't touch them.
They just can't touch them. And I did notice that my big takeaway was I saw pressure. Baron Sorrell flashed early. Anthony Hill Those guys are going to get to the quarterback. Byron Murphy, they're going to get to the quarterback, I think. And I love what Thomas said, because it all goes together. If those guys can create havoc up front and get to the quarterback, Jalen Ford included in that group, then that's going to take the pressure off of these cornerbacks. I think Ryan Watts is an NFL corner. I think he'll be fine. But we got to figure out if these other guys are going to be up to task. I think Jahdae Barron is fine. And once you get everybody, the defense is a split. So once you get your best 11 over there and generate a good pass rush and have your best 11 on the field instead of in split squads, I think they'll be okay. But it's all incumbent on that front six, front seven to get it done, to take the pressure off the back end, because we all know in the Big 12, these quarterbacks get rid of the ball really fast.
Yep. And I will say, and Thomas, you laid out a couple of the reasons to defend the defense, but you can't hit anyone. Jalen Ford and Anthony Hill aren't playing on the same team, and let's be honest, Steve was just out here making up spots to keep the offense on the field. I mean, so I don't.
We were laughing at that, man. It was like 3rd and 8, and they get
very generous.
Like, move them chains, dog.
Yeah.
Did he run up and move the ball one time?
He did at one point physically take the ball and move it and say, all right, let's
what the hell, Sark?
Let's go. So I'm not too worried about the defense just yet. We'll see what happens when they're actually able to do what they do. But the spring standouts, whether it's from practice, whether it's from media sessions, whether it's from Saturday, who kind of stood out among this group? Kirk, we'll start with you from throughout the spring.
Well, you mentioned Donnie Mitchell, the transfer from Georgia, who's caught touchdowns in both championship games for the Bulldogs. He's the real deal, and he really stood out to me. You mentioned the one-handed grab in the end zone, which was spectacular. And I think he's going to be a breakout player, and we didn't even see Isaiah Nayor. He's still rehabbing his knee injury from late last summer. So, and Jatavian Sanders didn't catch a pass. So I'm really impressed with the receivers. I think they've got a really good core of receivers, and Jordan Whittington's going to catch a lot of balls, and Xavier Worthy played better, caught a deep pass, his body language looked better. He was into that. So so they jumped out at me. The other two that I'd mention is Savion Red, the receiver, moved to running back.
Lord, don't name them all. Save some for me and Thomas. Golly.
Come on, Kirk.
Five guys. You mentioned 5 guys. Save some for the others.
I mentioned Mitchell, and I mentioned Red. I mentioned Terrence Brooks, who's going to be all Big 12 cornerback. Write it down.
Oh,
go ahead.
Okay. I didn't know he was even going to start with Ryan Watts and Gavin Holmes.
Yeah, he'd still be going.
I think he might. I love Terrence Brooks. Go ahead, Thomas. Who you got?
Well, Anthony Hill, we're talking freshmen who are ready to go. He's a 5-star kid that flipped from A&M late to UT. He started in the spring. He's impressed everyone all spring. At the Orange-White game, he started where Demario Overshown used to start. And what impressed me is they moved him around. He's at linebacker. They moved him to edge. They let him rush the passer. He's dropping back in coverage. That tells me that he fully grasps what they want him to do defensively. He understands the schemes. He knows where he's supposed to be on any particular play. He's a star in the making. I love watching him play Saturday. I think that's going to be a big help for the Longhorn defense in the fall.
I love his hand on the ground.
Yeah.
I think he's the edge guy. I think he could be the next Orakpo if he wants to be. And I know that's big talk, but he leaps off the screen. You know where he is when he's on the field, and you can't keep your eyes off of him. My guy, Ryan Watts, I mean, he blew a couple of guys up at a spring football game, and that got me kind of excited. You're not supposed to hit, but he's physical, and he's big, and he's like 6'2", 6'3". He's like Mel Blount. Me and Kirk remember Mel Blount. That's an old school Pittsburgh Steeler who was a 6'3" corner in the 70s, who's in the Hall of Fame now. Physical cornerbacks, that kind of thing can proliferate through a defense. People love physical corners, and he's going to be I think he's going to be their blitzer. He's going to be the guy that's going to be changing games off the edge, coming off the edge and blitzing. and shutting down the other team's best receiver. I'm looking forward to not only this season for him, but watching him play in the league, because he's the prototype now. They want big corners, and he's the guy that other college coaches are looking for in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got caught up in the moment on Saturday, and I am all in on Jaden Blue. I don't care if that defense was inexplicable on that run or what exactly happened, but that run up there was a lot of fun. And Jaden's an interesting young man. He skipped his senior year of high school, didn't play that season, enrolled early, didn't get to play much last year, so he hasn't played a lot these last 2 years. But throughout the spring, his teammates had a lot of good things to say about him, as well as the other running backs in that room. And that's going to be the big question going this fall: is who replaces Bijan's production, who replaces Roshan's production. And I think in the spring game, you had Jaden, you had CJ Baxter had a touchdown. Savion Red, we've talked a lot about him and just kind of his transition to that position. He ran the ball well and caught a couple passes on Saturday. So you have 3 candidates there, and that's not even including Keelan Robinson or Jonathan Brooks, who didn't play on Saturday. So Steve has a lot of options there. Now, he's a kind of a guy who likes a bell cow running back. Like he boasts about having his 1,000-yard rusher streak, or whatever he likes to say as a play caller. I mean, that's a reason. You don't get that by having a committee. So he's going to have to choose 1 or 2 of these guys. But I really like what I saw about Jaden on Saturday, and kind of reminding everyone why he was so well thought of out of high school. And maybe if he gets a shot this fall, he can replicate Saturday's results. But maybe I also just got caught up in the moment.
Let me ask y'all a quick question. Right now, mid-April, we have a long way to go before the season. Who leads this team in rushing next year with all that depth at running back? Who do you think?
I think if you pick one, you're foolish at this point. I
mean, who, if you had to pick one?
There are 5 backs, and all 5 backs I can lay out a reason why all 5 should be starters. I think it's really just going to be one of these guys is going to catch Steve's eye that first week, maybe in the Alabama game, and hold on to the job. I don't think we can say definitively one way or the other in April, because once again, 2 of those guys aren't playing right now. They're also the ones with the most experience. Keelan's been with Steve for 3-4 years now. Jonathan Brooks, we all thought he was the guy last year, and then he kind of struggled in the Alamo Bowl, and we didn't see much of him in the spring. CJ Baxter's a 5-star. Jaden Blue did what he did, and Savion Red, he's kind of the wild card. So
Keelan's is a slasher. I don't think he's an every down guy. So I will say this, Thomas Jones. I'm like Danny Davis. I got some Jaden Blue goggles going right now. That impressed the hell out of me. I saw speed, I saw power, I saw elusiveness, and I saw balance all on one run. So I like him.
I think a lot of guys are going to get touches in the backfield this year.
I think it's Jonathan Brooks' job to lose, though. And
yeah, I like Jonathan, but
he's kind of paid his dues, and Sark raved about him. Like every time we put him in the game, he's produced. And to your point, he had hernia surgery in January, I guess. So, and he barely got any playing time, but scored a touchdown in the Alamo Bowl. So I think it's his job to lose starting out. CJ Baxter looked good. He's lean. Seth and I were talking. What did they list him at? Like 214. He looks a lot leaner than that, but boy, they got a talented running back room. They really do. It's a lot of weapons. A lot of good options.
Lot of weapons, and Sark's got to figure out what mix works. Sometimes, like me and Kirk got into about this a couple of years ago with those receivers. The greatest receiving core. I was like, sometimes
he played too many. Herman wanted to play 8 guys. You play your best 3 or 4.
You got to play 2 or 3, and. Do we agree that somebody in that running back room is probably going to be in the portal this time next year? I'm going to say yes.
Always. There's always
a lot of talent. A lot of talent.
Speaking of that portal, there's a couple months we go before the season. There were a couple Longhorns who jumped into the transfer portal this past week. Team meetings are being held this week, individuals with Sark. So there's a chance a couple more Longhorns may decide to look elsewhere to continue their careers. But Steve will also probably be looking into the portal to see if there's some guys in there who can help his team. If you're advising Steve, what positions are you saying, hey, I think this team could use an upgrade here? If you can find a difference maker in the portal at this time of the year? Kirk, we'll start with you.
Well, I think the top three positions he needs to look at are defensive line, and then and defensive line. He could also use a linebacker, but and he even mentioned, he said, when I think said it was your question about the defensive front, and he kind of said, we may get a guy in the portal. Bear Alexander, the Georgia D lineman, who's a starter, is in the portal. So if they could get somebody like him to really kind of bolster that, and like I said, you wrote about the double-digit sacks, how long it's been, since they've had somebody do that. Was it Cedric Reed, wasn't it?
Jackson, Jeff Colt, they both Jackson at 13
Double
and
digits.
at 10, 10 years ago.
So it's been a minute. So I would think defensive line with linebacker a close second.
I go edge rusher, just like we talked about. That's a game-changing position, and I know they need some beef up front, but a good edge rusher can change a game and mask a lot of ills on the back end or even up front. So, and I believe, and we've talked about this, Daniel and Duck, and before TJ came on, it's starting to become a running backs league again. It's funny how it was quarterbacks, with Colt and Sam Bradford and those guys, and running backs are starting to get some run again in this league, but still that edge rusher is so important. And if they can find a guy that can get them 5 or 6 sacks in that portal, give him $300,000 because that's going to come in handy. And I know these guys are overpaid, but good for them. I wish we were overpaid.
No, I agree. I think the edge is almost, I think the edge rusher is really the only glaring need on the team, opposite Baron Sorrell. I think he'll have a good year. Ethan Burke, the Westlake product, looked good Saturday. And you can never have enough defensive backs. You saw a couple of guys like we talked about were hurt Saturday. You can never have enough guys to cover receivers. Simple as that. So if Sark can go find another defensive back or two, guy that can play nickel, versatile cover man, I would say that prioritize that. And Bear Alexander, from Georgia. He's a Texas kid. Once I think he was close to signing with A&M. Bring him back home. He'd be a difference maker in the middle.
Yeah, I think if you can improve the depth at any of the positions on defense, I think you take that swing and try to get one of those players together. I think you're pretty set depth-wise on offense, as we've talked about for much of this podcast. I think every position there goes, too deep. Even the tight end, I mean, they're pretty high on Gunnar Helm, and Jatavian Sanders. I think they're set pretty much on all offensive positions. But, if you can help your depth on defense, I think that is something that is worth addressing. But so spring game, football season's done, or spring football season's done. Now we just have about 5 months to go before that Rice game at DKR on September 2nd, I believe it is. But it's not dead on campus yet. There's a lot still going on. The baseball team ranked 14th this week in the D1 poll. The Big 12 leading baseball team, they have 4 games at home this week. Abilene Christian on Wednesday, Oklahoma Friday through Sunday. The softball team ranked 8th nationally. Who knows if the new poll hasn't come out yet, so I don't know if they're going to dip a little bit after losing 1 game to Kansas this past weekend. But Oklahoma State, which was 3rd, is coming into town. So we have an 8-3 matchup Thursday through Saturday over at McCombs. TJ and I will be out there at least once or twice to see that happening. Should be some really good softball over at McCombs Field. Women's golf team, Big 12 championships are in Dallas this weekend. And then both the men's and the women's tennis teams have their Big 12 championships in Lawrence this weekend. Rowing and track, they're on the road, but neither of those are Big 12 championship matches. So that's a tease for what's going on campus. On Second Thought Podcast, we have a tease for that. Yeah, what are y'all cooking up with the Thursday?
Ooh, it's rough right now on Second Thought. We're trying to get a major mega star, and I'm begging like Keith Sweat, but
you sound like RT talking about the portal.
But he's ghosting me right now. So we're
trying to get a major star.
Trying to get him, and I'm not going to tell you who he is, Bijan Robinson, but we're trying to get him. If we get him, we get it.
Hey, we talked to RG3 who did the game, and he's wanting to come on after the draft, but RG3 looked impressive, and he really likes his Texas team, didn't he, Sid?
Yeah, we really liked RG3. Man, such great perspective. I should have just hit the record button, Doug.
Yeah, we should have. That was a great conversation.
Button and go, just keep talking, dog. Just keep talking. He's got a lot to say, and he's a star. And quiet as it's kept, he still wants to play in the league.
Hey, move to Houston. Texans need a quarterback.
Yep,
Just
but
saying,
that phone
just saying.
is not ringing. That phone's not ringing, so
It looks like he could play.
he does. He does. And he's got 4 kids, so that's incentive to keep playing too.
Whoever y'all do get, we will find out on Thursday morning when that drops on statesman.com and wherever you get your podcasts. As for us, that's going to do it for us. Be sure to check out statesman.com throughout the week for all of our baseball, softball coverage. Sed's writing about some football stuff for his Golden Nuggets for tomorrow's newspaper. We'll have a lot of draft stuff next week since the NFL draft is next week. And obviously Bijan, Roshan, Moro Ojimo, Keandre Coburn, DeMarvin Overshown should all hear their names called at some point during the weekend. And then there's some other guys, Deshaun James and Anthony Cook, who may be late picks or, undrafted free agents. So lots of Longhorns are going to be looking forward to the next stage of their career, and we'll be covering all of that next week. But that's going to do it for us. Once again, we appreciate you watching on YouTube, listening to this on wherever you get your podcast. We're probably done for until the summer, maybe Big 12 Media Days or fall camp. So we will see y'all then. But once again, we just appreciate you checking us out.
Be safe out there.